Just, I'm Christy Jedigoddess.
Sang it, baby.
Sang it. Hi,
Sang
welcome.
it.
Hi, welcome to our video. Christy Jedigoddess here, and I'm here with the awesome our maestro Chris Moore, and we're going to delve a little deeper, talking about the brand new soundtrack from Wonder Woman 84 by the wonderful Hans Zimmer. So I wanted to deep dive and talk a little bit about that. Mr. Moore, I will give the floor to you because you are a maestro and are expert on such things musical. What'd you think of
You
the
flatter
soundtrack?
me, but thank you. I think it's one of Hans Zimmer's best. Here's the thing is that there's a lot of people who dig into the film score side of music. It's actually almost not weird, but a very niche subculture. Like if you went into a record store back in the day in a mall somewhere and you asked for a soundtrack, you always got the dirty look like, oh, you're one of those guys, right?
Right.
So, um, but at the same time, for every one of those, there's like you get a Star Wars where everybody has that album one way or another, or they've heard the music, whether or not it's become part of their soul. That's a whole different other subject. And the great thing is with Wonder Woman 1984, there's some music to attach onto. There's a great melodic structure to it. Everybody that's been hearing the stuff from the Zack Snyder movies that Hans Zimmer's been involved with one way or another, whether we're talking Man of Steel or Batman versus Superman. Man of Steel had a nice melodic theme, which is kind of hard considering you write music for Superman, you're automatically judged against John Williams already. And that music has lived since 1978 and is adored. So Hans Zimmer already knew that going in.
Yeah, that's one thing I loved about this new soundtrack is that there is a discernible theme for when Diana comes on screen. It's that like, da, 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 it's that Valkyrie cry.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what's synonymous with Superman. Has a beautiful theme. I mean, if we go John Williams, Leia's theme, I've always, that real softness. And so it's interesting. It's kind of like this resurgence of when you hear that, it's about Wonder Woman, it's its own theme, its own DNA to it.
Which is as it should be. If there's two schools of thought out there that I can kind of discern. Some people who think themes like that will take you out of the moment, and not every movie needs it. But when we're talking about superheroes, yeah, you absolutely want that iconography. I want that fanfare. I want the Batman theme by Danny Elfman crying out. Although, not to be outdone, Hans Zimmer worked on Batman Begins. Him and James Newton Howard had that two notes, you got a hero, right? It's almost like with Jaws, two notes, you got a villain, right?
Exactly.
Just as a juxtaposition with another John Williams score. But if we're talking about heroes, you want something that as soon as you see them on screen, you hear that, you know what you're looking at. There's a sight and sound marriage where it's not just the way they talk. It's not just the sight of their costume. It's everything.
I was going to say this too. Hans Zimmer has done a lot of fantastic soundtracks. I know, if I'm not mistaken, Gladiator soundtrack was Hans Zimmer, which I cried. That music from Lisa Gerrard of Dead Can Dance. She did the main theme to that, and I cried. I couldn't in my popcorn. And he's done a lot of stuff like that, though. What are some of the other scores that people would recognize by Hans Zimmer?
Oh, he goes back quite a ways, actually. A lot of people will probably dismiss him as like, some people dismiss him as the action movie score composer or an Oscar-based score composer, because you mentioned Gladiator. He certainly won the Academy Award for Best Original Score for The Lion King. And then he came back to that project again in 2019 for the live-action Jon Favreau directed version of that story. But he goes back to, let's say, Rain Man, with Tom Cruise and Dustin Hoffman. He's Driving Miss Daisy, which everybody remembers that. In fact, there's a famous moment in the movie The Holiday with Jack Black where he's humming the theme right there. Do 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 gong gong. I mean, I give Jack Black props for delivering such passion over Zimmer. I thought I was a passionate Zimmer fan, but he took the taco on that one. But no, he's done scores. Like my first score to listen to of his was Backdraft. Backdraft, which I always felt like this was this great kick-ass firefighter story. And he wrote an incredible score that had what he even describes as something with a lot of balls, forgive the expression. But it was a bold and robust score and very emotional. A good percentage of that is really emotional.
I mean, Backdraft didn't need it, but that I remember the music. I remember the scene, the slow motion, when Kurt Russell is coming out of the fire. It's just that score that just comes up and kind of grabs you. But it's the same way for action films too. Like even going back to what we were saying, like with Wonder Woman. I listened to the soundtrack actually, or the score rather, and I loved it. And there was a couple songs on there where you can kind of, when you hear that theme, that discernible theme of hers, you just know she's on screen at the moment. And I remember even watching the film, when she's fighting Cheetah, got her bracers up, her theme starts going, and it's like, wow, okay,
yeah,
but those are the kind of the magic moments
absolutely,
that kind of connects you full force with it. I mean, I guess Superman to me is one of the greatest examples, because I think of Christopher Reeve every time I hear the Superman theme, and Batman. All of these, you just know what you're about to see, and it's who's about to come on the screen.
Well, exactly. And the great thing is the genesis of that what you described very aptly as the Valkyrie cry, so to speak, was a track on the soundtrack of Batman versus Superman, which Hans Zimmer worked on with this great composer Tom Holkenborg, which is known to the club and DJ universe as Junkie XL. And he's gone on to have his own career in film score as well.
Great stuff.
It was a track called "Is She With You?" And that track, "Is She With You?" If you seek out that track, if you listen to no other piece of music on that particular soundtrack, for whatever reason you choose to go for that, "Is She With You" is that moment where Wonder Woman shows up and comes to battle against Doomsday in the film. Again, the same, cross of the bracers, battle pose. And what's interesting is that I watched this documentary called Score. It's a really good documentary about score composers, different ones, and what they do, how they approach scoring, and just it's a nice 90-minute kind of overview for anyone that wants to understand this a little bit. And it shows you some of the modern composers working right now, as along with some references to folks like we've just talked about, like John Williams. But one particular individual, and I forget his name, but he aptly described a lot of what Hans Zimmer does as being Led Zeppelin with an orchestra. And if you listen to "Is She With You," and anytime that Wonder Woman theme has come up, it's very much like, it sounds an awful lot like the Immigrants song by Led Zeppelin, where you've got that wailing cry that it makes you want to study, or I guess I'm the only one who's kind of like just would love to, exactly. I would love to know like how Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, those guys, how they came up with that, and then find out how Hans Zimmer, knowing what he knows about that kind of music, because when you're a score composer, you're going to be listening to all kinds of things.
You can sense the inspiration, and that's really, really cool. And it has that same kind of, like you said, iconography, where you kind of identify with what that is. I think it's a very cool sound. So I know you listen to the full soundtrack of it, the full score. Now, are there any particular outliers that you found when listening to it?
Yes, as a matter of fact, there's 3 in particular cues that are really worth going toward on the score album. And for each different reasons. One is the opening track, Themyscira, which covers the opening of the movie. And the interesting thing about it is that "Is She With You" sounds like a very intense, almost scary in a way kind of version of the theme. Themyscira is like the complete antithesis of that. It's very much celebratory because of the scenes that it's marrying, because we're seeing Diana as a young girl prepping for the games and going into it. In fact, I know a track that's a favorite of yours on the score album is "Games," which follows right after Themyscira. And to me, Themyscira and "Games" are like a 2-parter right there. It's really just, you start with one, you get the whole majesty of being there, getting ready for the games, and then the games themselves, it's funny you mentioned Gladiator by Zimmer, because we're talking a gladiatorial experience. In fact, they have the like young girls in a corral shouting, right? It almost reminded me of The Dark Knight Rises, another Zimmer score, where for a long time it had that Deshi, Basara, that whole thing that goes behind certain sequences in that film referencing Bane. Which, by the way, I always thought he was singing fishy, fishy pasta sauce. I don't know why. That's just
it's
what
one
it
of those
sounded like to me.
misheard lyric things, you know?
Yes, but Themyscira and Games together, and with that great Young Girls Chorale with Games, is just, you hear the strength, the drive, and the desire that lead to that opening scene in the film. Two other tracks that really are very great standout. I'm actually going to give you three. Another one is Open Road.
That's
and
my
it's
favorite.
Interesting to note that along the way,
Open Road's my favorite off the soundtrack. Games is amazing, but Open Road, like I've listened to that like over and over again, and it's just great. It tells a story on it. It's a score, but the score tells a story, you know, and it encompasses to me the whole film. You know, it really does when you listen to it.
Exactly. Well, I mean, 50% of film is sound, which is obvious. And we're talking sound effects, sound mix, your Foley artists who come up with some other sound that would have nothing to do with another sound on screen, but they make that sound to mimic it, to flesh it out, to make it stand out more, and hopefully in subtle ways that don't take you out of the moment. And Open Road, if there's one thing that Zimmer is always really good at, it's action scoring. And Open Road is definitely the 7 to 8 minute moment in the film where you've got some intense battling. I mean, she's trying to catch up to Maxwell Lord. She's battling off all these guys just to try to get to him. It's a great marriage of propulsive rhythmic sounds that take you along. And there's a beginning, middle, and end to a film. When you're a composer, and this is something I suspect, I don't know if I'm actually correct about this, but a lot of what you do as a composer is you have to understand the language of film, not just how music is written, like this note here and the way it's played can do this. Sometimes you have to be a musicologist and understand music in other nations to be able to pull some of that off. But at the core of everything, to get to the emotion of a scene, to put some adrenaline in it or to put some tears into it, in order to do that, you really have to understand that there is a specific structure to even just a small scene, that there is a beginning, middle, and end. Whether or not your music covers that, it may not necessarily need to, but Zimmer definitely in Open Road covered that ground. But he's done that for years, whether we're talking about Crimson Tide, The Rock, The Peacemaker, something more recent in terms of action films, certainly what he's done for the DC universe. I mean, there's a great track from The Dark Knight that covers the opening robbery, and when the Joker robs the bank, the mob bank. And that's 5 minutes of brilliance right there. And it's just has a total beginning, middle, and end, because your music is supporting the image and supporting the events of the images playing out on screen. Mm-hmm. So that's another great track. Two others I like is Fireworks, because it has this very anthemic and very sweeping, almost kind of patriotic feel to it, and it marries well with the scene. And it kind of needs to, because they just simply mention that it's 4th of July and there's fireworks and they fly through them. So how else are you going to really depict that other than to show that there's decorations on, you know, different structures around DC to do that? So you need an anthemic piece of music to really kind of get behind both, you know, all the necessary emotions that you're seeing play out on the screen. Now, my final pick on there is a track that's considered a bonus track that's been included called Lost and Found. And it's 12 minutes. Nobody's going to sit through that unless you're like you and me, right?
Right.
But it's a beautiful, slow moving, very tranquil, very beautiful piece of music. And what it covers is the emotion that is driving through the last act of the story, which is coming to the truth of what accepting what is, as opposed to what you wish for, which is a big piece of what that film's about.
Right. And I love that. I think that's a great way to close out the score, because of that. Now, I read on the internet, some people were upset, and I wasn't one of them, but I just to be fair, some people felt that there could have been more 80s pop identifiable music in the film. What are your thoughts on that? Because the film was set.
The question is, does it serve the story?
Yeah.
And do you need it? The question is always whether you're a screenwriter, a film director, an actress, a score composer, is what you're doing serving the story and moving it along? So yes, for atmosphere, they had them all. That breakdance sequence, I always wondered if they were going to cut into some sort of silly moment where Diana was going to break dance, and I'm glad they didn't, because we already have enough, clap back coming from folks who didn't like the film on the internet. I don't think that would have added, any. I don't think that would have helped our, efforts to say it's a good film. But yeah, here's the thing: is coming into the film, it was marketed with Blue Monday, reorchestrated in some sort of trailer-like music experience that usually serves the idea of telling you, okay, here's the trailer, here's what you can expect to see, and since it's in '84, we're going to reference Blue Monday.
Right.
And it has that like twist into, you got what they call trailer toms, which are those big drums you hear, or maybe some extra synth here and there. That sounds like what you would expect from a Hans Zimmer score if you know what you're listening for. But if anybody who's seen a trailer knows what they're listening for, that it just has extra horns, and they're usually very deep, very loud. But on the top of that, that I'd set enough of the stage to support the '84 business. I mean, if you'd thrown like a bunch of pop songs in there unnecessarily, you'd probably get some of the same negative reactions. Yeah, it would have been great to hear like Grandmaster Flash in the background of that breakdancing sequence. I mean, if you probably heard a tiny bit of it in the sound mix buried deep, but it moves so quickly, it doesn't matter. I mean, again, the point is it necessary to have that song in there? I mean, if you're going to have songs in a movie, my feeling is always, does it support what you're going to do in the scene? Does it take you out of the situation or keep you invested in it? A good song is going to support the film, or it's going to just be background noise, right? So I think they were wiser in this case to have that. There was a song included over the credits of the first Wonder Woman movie. And unfortunately, I mean, it was by Sia. The song was called To Be Human. And I know the song was meant to support, it's sort of a way of Diana assuaging her loneliness after losing Steve Trevor at the end of that movie, right?
Right.
But I thought it was a dismissible track that could have been spaced in the credits to have a great restatement of all the music you heard in the movie, which you get later in the credits. Now, by most time in the credits, people have left the theater unless you're the kind of moviegoer that likes to stay through the credits, not just for the post-credit scene, but just because you want to hear the music, or you want to see, maybe you want to see a friend of yours that works in LA listed in the credits. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. It's like, all these people worked on it, so you should sit here and, and just really understand, all this going on. And I'm one of those too. But if you're going to have music running over that, let it be something that re-encapsulates what you enjoyed about this movie. I have a lot of gripes about a lot of movies when what they run over the music over the credits is either just a lot of song medleys, or it's a song that wasn't even in the movie, that isn't even descriptive of the movie, and it's not included. But fortunately, you don't have to worry about that. In fact, in the closing credits of Wonder Woman '84, they actually reused Themyscira, and I want to say they used a piece that sounded like Lost and Found from the album running over the credits. I can't say that for sure. I'd have to see it again. But to me, if you're going to close out the movie with the music of the film, you can't do much better than Themyscira. I mean, there's a whole joy and celebration in that musical piece that it should be over the credits and celebrating the completion of the story. All right, something else that's interesting to note, along the way of leading to the release of Wonder Woman '84, Themyscira and Open Road were released as digital singles on most of the major retailers like Amazon and iTunes. So there was already this buzz of Zimmer's music along the way for those who were looking forward to the film, as well as those who are Zimmer fans. And interestingly enough, in a way, Wonder Woman '84 musically is a complete antidote to a project Zimmer worked on the year prior called Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, I like
the
Dark
X-Men
Phoenix.
film. Right. I did too, but that music, it's, as much as I'm a Zimmer fan and I own it. In fact, they released a second album which had all of his experiments and what they call sketches coming up with the music for the movie. And unfortunately, the problem is it sounds so sad and is so much about the really it supports the film really, really well, but it's a very sad and almost a very negative listening experience of that album, almost as much as the film was for many people. And to me, Wonder Woman 84 is the complete antidote to that. It's very much a joyous story. And even though there's emotional moments, some very dark moments in it, Dark Phoenix it was track after track of dark sounding music. And it, at a certain point, is that something you want to listen to more than once? That's another big key of like, if you're going to enjoy the movie and enjoy the music from it, are you going to listen to it more than once? Which is, that speaks to having songs that are from the period, or having songs that are written for the film about the period, or the score itself. Are you going to want to listen to it outside the movie? And I can confidently say, whatever flaws that Wonder Woman 84 might have, personally for me, as a Zimmer fan, as a fan of DC characters, and as a fan of just enjoying really good, fun, original music score from films, I'll definitely listen to this one more than once. 2 years from now, will we be listening to it? Will we be watching the movie? That's a big question.
I know
I can say,
yeah, I can safely say I will.
Yeah, I think I will be. And I think I'll be listening to Zimmer's music. I keep a playlist of all the stuff I like from him on my iPhone. So yeah, I'll definitely include tracks from this on that. I think I already have.
Well, I think that's what's going to happen. It's going to get its legs again, and I think that's going to happen down the line. But I think we have to get a little bit further away from it right now. It's been one of those years. But I think ultimately we're in agreement. Like, I really enjoyed the score to it. I didn't have a problem with them not including those 80 songs in there. I can understand why that would be a letdown, because the trailer did lead with Blue Monday, so you kind of expected something. But ultimately, it wasn't a deal breaker for me personally. But I think overall, I think the score is fantastic. It's kind of like, it's one of those things where I actually went and found it out on Spotify, and I started listening to it myself. And I really connected to it. And Open Road was really cool, and I listened to that one like a lot, because it's very much like dun 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 action. And then I love games. I love that hoo ha, kind of sound. So I think it works. I think it's a beautifully done score, and Hans Zimmer kind of kicked ass once again. So I have to give him props for that.
Somebody could be listening to Hans Zimmer for the first time through this movie, and if that's something they like and want to hear more of, they're in for a treat, because he's written the music for No Time to Die, not the single by Billie Eilish, but the score for the film, if it ever gets released, along with other ones. He's also working on the music for Dune. And what's interesting is, just like they did with Themyscira and Open Road, they released the trailer music from Dune in advance. I think the company that releases this music, a company called Water Tower Music, wanted to put it out there and give something, like Hans Zimmer is trying to be generous and give fans of the films and his music something to enjoy while we're waiting for these films to come along and for his music to get released. But what's interesting about that one, and you could totally cut this out entirely as to what finally gets posted, but it's actually a piece of music that references a Pink Floyd song. And the reason that's interesting is, just like he's referencing Led Zeppelin, possibly, with his theme from Wonder Woman, the trailer music from Dune, the fact that it references a song by Pink Floyd, like literally it's titled Eclipse, that's a song from The Dark Side of the Moon. The reason that's interesting is that when Dune, when they first tried to make that book into a movie, a guy named Alejandro Jodorowsky, they made a big documentary about him trying to make Dune. Yeah. Well, he wanted Pink Floyd to do the music for that movie. So
breaking my heart.
I know. I suspect Zimmer knew this, and that's why he chose that song from The Dark Side of the Moon and gave it his spin on it.
Easter eggs
for the trailer. Yeah, it's this tiny little obscure stuff that absolutely no one but me and a handful of other music aficionados or film score fans are going to care about.
And it's the same thing with film. I said, it's the same thing with film too, man, and comics
or comic books.
Any kind of media, like literature too. They're just gonna slide a little Easter egg in there. Awesome. Well, I think we covered the basis of the score. What do you think?
Yeah, we covered ad nauseum, and that's mostly my fault.
I think it's great. Well, awesome. Well, it was awesome to catch up. and talked. That's my clapping. It was awesome to catch up and talk about,
Nice.
because I wanted to focus on the score and really dive into that, because I really thought it was something really, it was just an incredible score, and it's pretty high up there as far as just rhythmic and just melodic, and just kind of pulls you in, and it really, to me, kind of lays out the film. It kind of tells you the story of the film if you really listen to it. So thank you so
It
much.
belongs with the film.
Yes, it does.
Absolutely.
It really does.